Right. Yeah. Go ahead and get started. Okay, that sounds good. We welcome you all to our road and bridge meeting. We appreciate representatives from the City of Idaho Falls being here for a discussion item. But first on the agenda, let's take care of some quick claim deeds for the City of Idaho Falls. David, you want to explain those?
So yeah, this is the acceptance of some quitclaim deeds from the IPD, Bonneville County. These are, they're just clearing up some remnant parcels of a old Hammond Hackman Road project. The aerials are, show the exhibit A through D where they're located. And there is a signature line for each of you on the red tab sheet, just accepting the quitclaim parcels. So,
You explained D to me earlier. You wanna, that one was
yeah,
a little surprising out there in the middle of,
that one, I think they must have gotten such a big wide strip of land for sand hills or something out there, and landowners adjacent to that had contacted them, wanting them to feed some of that back to them. That's gonna happen. Parcel D, P4 and P5 is a 100-foot wide strip. The center line of which is the existing road that the county will retain.
okay, here's the agreement. Would one of you like to make a motion?
That motion, I'll forward. Second.
All in favor?
Right.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get those signed. Next on the agenda is discussion and a continuation of the discussion on the fuel spills facility. Thanks for sending us the information. I think with that, it caused some more questions that we might have. So,
By the way, I failed to put it on there. It's covered under our general discussion, but I think to kind of be abundantly transparent, we should make a motion to amend the agenda to include them specifically on this. There's no action.
thank you. And all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So, yeah, we'll go ahead. You want to take a minute, share what you like, and then we may have some questions.
Sure. So thank you again for having us this morning. I have here Stan is our equipment maintenance superintendent, and you hopefully recall meeting him a few weeks ago. And then also I have Mark Hagedorn. He is our city treasurer, also / finance manager. And so we're both here today to go over a couple of items, but the first item on the agenda is to talk about the fuel facility cost analysis. We spoke about it back in. Well, we started some correspondence back in October. It is an over 13-year-old facility that we do have a joint agreement with the county with. And we had asked back in October to go over a few modifications that we'd like to have with the agreement or to have a discussion about. One of them being the, the 6 cents per gallon. It's more of an administrative overhead type of fee for us to be able to process things such as invoices, competitive bids, any of the other things that involve the operations of the actual fuel facility itself. And so we promised an analysis, and it took us a little bit longer to get that, but you do have it as a handout as well as in an email. And so we'll go over that. And then also in your packet, just some draft proposed language that we talked about last time we were here a few weeks ago, that incorporates instead of 6 cents, it now says we're proposing 8 cents per gallon as a proposal, as well as the language that we spoke about with the adding the accessibility for our gift program. It is a political unit with the Federal Transit Administration providing microtransit within the City of Idaho Falls. And then before I get any farther in the proposed amendment, these terms would be, we're proposing these terms be effective October 1st of 2024, obviously to allow for for budgets and things of that nature, because that was brought up as of a concern last time we met. If I may, if there are any questions, may start with the first page.
Go ahead.
Okay, starting with the first page, so this data of information is been calculated through October 20th through February 2024. Again, a 3-year period. We felt that rather than go back 13 years, let's just look at a 3-year snapshot. So one of the things that hopefully looks familiar here is the total gallons used for the city and the county. We touched on that a little bit when we met a few weeks ago. And so it looks like we're a 60, almost 40 split on the use for that 3-year period of October 2020 through February of 2024. The current surcharge price per gallon is 6 cents. And then the total surcharge paid based on that is $56,153. So we went through and we took all of the data which is attached to this packet, as well as in the file, the electronic file I sent over. I thought that perhaps you might want to have I think it was Mr. Longmore that was looking at this as well, to make sure there's no formula errors or anything of that nature. But we just,
Ron Smith.
pardon me, Ron Smith.
Yeah.
That we have labor, miscellaneous supplies, the Fleet Focus software that we use for maintaining the fuel dispenser. That's the software that we use for that. The new dispensers that we talked about in your packet is the council memo that went to city council approving the upgrade of the fuel dispenser replacement that we were really in need of getting taken care of. And then, of course, as we mentioned last time, we had some challenges with the weather and things like that with getting it completed, but it is completed, fully operational. And I think that we're already starting to see efficiencies with that particular system. And then any utilities that are required to run the actual fuel dispenser systems themselves. And then if you come down here, just as the calculation for the proposed requested surcharge of 8 cents per gallon versus the previous 6 cents per gallon, effective October 1st of 2024 as a proposal. And then if you have any more specific questions about the operations or any of the actual detailed expenses, that's why I have Stan here to answer any questions we have about that, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Okay,
That's what
cool.
I do, but they're probably in a little different order than.
Oh, cool. No, feel free.
Well, I mean, the first thing we have a question on is, I think I indicated that to you for this meeting. The secretary at landfill got a notice from the city clerk or whoever sent it out saying that they were, well, how did they word that? They were cut off basically because of non-payment. Lance had a whole series of invoices there. But they were a little bit shocked that if we were that far behind, because the concern we have, and that's why I'm glad Mark's here, because Lance says we've been trying to go through and reconcile that. And they got a bill from 2022 that we didn't have in our budget for how much?
I don't remember exactly how much.
So we're billing you?
Yeah, you're billing us.
It was an outstanding invoice supposedly, and
For 2022.
we didn't know about it.
The question I have is, how do you book those in on your end? Because they sent them over with the invoice number. And they were told that those just are applied to the oldest and then worked up, which is hard to track.
This is okay. This is a utility payment?
No,
Fuel payment.
fuel payment from the county.
So it's a bill for fuel.
Oh, okay.
You billed us for fuel used in 2020,
And someone told you,
and they were gonna shut us off because that bill hadn't been paid for the bunch of months that had been.
Now, they're two separate issues.
Yeah, they're two, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the one at the landfill,
Solid waste.
solid waste. It was a separate issue when they said, because you haven't paid your bills.
oh, we haven't paid a bill.
We
No.
haven't paid our bills to you, that we were cut off from, that the solid waste was cut off. I think I included the email.
At the fuel.
I don't, Yeah, I don't have a copy of the email with me right
My
now.
understanding is you're current on all of the fuel invoices, so a little,
So anyways,
yeah.
I'll give you my contact information and I thought we were talking about a different issue. I'll run that down and find out what was said and why it is that it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, because Lance took the 2022 and paid it, so I don't know if we paid duplicate, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
we'll run that and we'll find if we were overcharged or overpaid, we'll issue a refund.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get an explanation for that, because it's kind of,
Well, I thought you were talking about, we are still working on our sanitation fees to you. There's to the property taxes. And so we are working with the Public Works Department to outline how many cans. So that's what I came in to talk about. Didn't know about, it was the other way around. So,
On this particular issue, it was the other way around.
yeah,
That my secretary got an email, or solid waste got an email, basically saying solid waste was gonna be cut off from using the fuel station because of lack of payment. And so my.
that sounds like
secretary-
scams personally.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Those two systems aren't related.
go with that,
Yeah.
yeah, because my understanding is that the county, we had about 3 years ago, I think it was, we had an issue where we were doing the 12 payments within the year and we had to sort that out, but to my knowledge, ever since we've gone to our new billing software, we haven't had any issues with that, so I think that might be what that was. Because my understanding is you're correct.
I've got the email here. You want me to read it?
Can you just look at it?
It was actually a correspondence, so it was from Greer to Lance. It said Debbie with solid waste brought me in mail and included statement and all invoices with statement. Because that day the city said that solid waste was cut off because there was a little over 149,000 in the rears. After reconciling the statement, I found 3 invoices that had been paid. And that day I processed the other 2 invoices that were past due and the March invoice that was due.
Yeah, that's nice.
That was from Greer.
Like, can we forward this to?
Yeah, to both of us, because that's strange.
yeah, see, because the past due, you know, they pay, since you've started sending those spreadsheets upstairs with the minor hiccup, it's, you know, this was a resurrection of an older problem I thought we had solved.
Yep.
Because they put them in the mailbox and didn't wanna, the explanation we got before was they didn't want to put a stamp on them because the police would come back and forth.
Mhm.
And then the police weren't doing it, so they wanted us to come down and pick them up. Penny worked on that to explain that you did put a stamp on it. And apparently this went back to the old thing sitting in the box and we didn't get the invoices. So when they came, there may have been 2 or 3 that were delinquent.
No, we'll get you an answer by the end of the day.
Okay. The other thing is, there are some questions. First, Lance had some questions on the agreement that you sent us. Do you want to address those? Because some of them are, you know, I've got more in-depth questions.
Yeah. So I was just going through and asking a couple of things. On the first, the amendment. Do we share equally or do we share as a percentage of the gallons used?
The original agreements. See, I haven't changed any, the only thing I've changed on this amendment is what's struck through, so everything else remains the same. So I believe it was shared previously.
Shared equally previously.
Yeah, it was
This
shared.
isn't the, excuse me, this isn't the complete original agreement, right?
No, it's just
No.
an amendment to the original.
Right.
So basically, all the wording is the same in the original 2010 agreement, with exception of the 8 cents, which I've added.
Okay, so that was my question. Should it be shared equally or should it be shared based on a percentage of fuel gallons used?
We felt that percentage of gallons used was more applicable on who's using the facility, so you're paying for what you're using. So you're not paying more. We felt that if you pay more than what you're using, you're subsidizing the city on their costs.
And when we originally did this, the usage was about equal.
Yeah.
You know, but the increase, and part of that's because our solid waste. You know, they have tanks that go to the hill and things like that, and we don't run through this. So our total usage is greater
Yeah.
than what's run through there.
Yeah, and that may have been the intent at the beginning, just because, you know, we were still starting out this relationship, but certainly, as Mark has said, it doesn't make, it's not applicable for the county to pay more than what they're actually using.
Yeah, for use is the
Yeah.
fair way to do it.
Okay, and I'll come back to some of the questions inside that.
So the other question is, under 4.1, item 5, providing for all utilities for lighting. Comment, and I had a question about whether power should be in there too. Lighting, power, sewer, water, sanitary, refuge services,
So like maybe add electric.
electric services or power or something in there. I mean, if we're gonna try to outline what we
Okay.
have there.
Absolutely.
Under 7, the reading of meters. You don't actually read the meters on the dispensers to put the billing in. Right?
And they come through electronically through our
It's
software.
an electronic.
all
software.
electronic.
Yeah,
Yes.
so maybe
So
we
you-
refresh that.
Well, that's, yeah, it's like, it's not a reading of the meter.
Right.
That is doing that.
Okay.
You still have in 4.2, you reference September 30th, 2011.
Mhm.
Yes.
And if we're doing an amendment, we probably ought to
Change the
change
date.
Okay,
that
we can
date,
change that.
right? Under 4.3. Just a question about the right to adjust such management fee on an annual basis.
Mhm.
So is that, it's going back to what you're proposing is the 8 cents. Is that intended to be looked at and adjusted annually? Is that what you're saying there?
Yes. Yes, now we could add in, because then it says after when I put August or August 1st of 2024, it was, the old language was August 1st of 2011, so I tried to
Right.
keep that the same.
Well, and I
Consistency.
actually would take out the 2024
Okay,
of that, and you say, if you say August 1st of
Each
each year,
year,
this
okay.
agreement is in force.
that sounds good.
That means you don't have to worry about a specific year, and the same with the next line there.
Okay. Sure, okay.
The next line there is the intent to assume management of the facility. So the decision to assume management of the facility and what it entails is to make that decision in 2 weeks, even a couple months is probably it's not feasible. It's
Okay.
not reasonable. You
Okay.
couldn't actually do it. At the end of that paragraph, again, take out the 2024, but it's like October 1st of each year, the agreement is in force. I mean, that's kind of, it more goes along with
Okay.
the other stuff.
Sure, no,
And
absolutely.
then
That's
down
good.
in 5.1, it talks about statements versus invoices. And I have been told recently, in fact, that we will not pay off a statement.
Right,
We will only pay off invoices.
and we're the same, and we're the same.
Regularly that.
Things were different
I
back
told
in
you that
2010,
yesterday.
right? Okay.
So
got it.
I taken the word statement out of it. It's
Okay.
We
probably,
did not want to take penny on.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And that's what I try to do, is I try to keep the same language as it was before, just because this was such an old agreement.
yeah.
I thought, well, let's just start from that point and then start making some modifications with your input.
Can I, while we're at this spot, help me understand a little bit more? You were involved in it, Roger, and your intent from the city. The county shall give notice to the city of its intent to accept the proposed fee or its intent to assume management of the facility for the next succeeding year. I mean, what does that involve? If we determined that we were gonna ask for management of it?
Well, that's a couple of these issues. you know, to complicate them, but, it would be, and it was set up that way when Craig and I put that together, but, you know, if the city decided it needed these based on their justification, and we felt like it was too high, you know, you cut the cake, in two and say, you choose.
Yeah,
You know, so that just, it's kind of a check, it was intended to be a checks and balances. So,
is it still an option now?
yeah, still an option now, that hasn't been taken out.
And does that mean that we would then take over?
Well, that's part of what's been complicated, a couple of things, we
Okay.
take over the management, you know, billing, but
Okay,
Well, and then that's not all. I think when you talk about management of it, you're talking about the full management of it.
that's my
what I'm
question. Does
saying.
that mean we buy the fuel, we and then?
Yeah, and that quickly becomes unfeasible for the county to just within a couple of weeks or a couple of months, switch it over to become a managing entity. It's just,
In addition, before that could happen, you'd have to have verification that all the upkeep and maintenance was
Do you want
done
some,
and up to, I mean, before that could happen, which should happen every year anyway, in the reporting, you should know that.
Yeah.
There should be a report
Right.
that all the upkeep and maintenance and everything is done like it should be, which.
so my understanding of the contract is that that was seen as a check and balance and an exit strategy if the county and the city could not get along.
check and balance, but the exit strategy is separate.
Yeah. I mean, I think,
One is you tied to the.
yeah, but I think, you know, Pam said, we can do something different if you want, is what I'm saying. If you want to have some other check and balance or some other exit strategy, I know they don't have to be tied together. We can talk about that and see what works, because when I read that, that seems changing management, that seems a little drastic. Well,
And what I said the last time we were here, that at this point in time, the city's not interested in having any kind of modifications to the management of the facility. I mean, obviously, the county might want to have some discussions about that, but that's not the intent of the city. It's not the intent of the notification and some of the correspondence that we've had back and forth. It has been pretty much limited to the areas that are in, this amendment. And so,
And
but.
the intent of what it was originally,
Mhm.
if the county feels comfortable, and changes your proposed,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the way it's been run, there's no need to,
Mhm.
so. Any others before I go into some of these?
again, on the last page there, it's based on, again, instead of 1/2, it would be percentage of fuel based instead of a half.
Which is a reasonable adjustment.
Okay, well, that's totally fine.
So, and this is, I just, in 5.2, I said prior written approval of the governing board of the now managing entity.
Okay.
Instead of, yeah, whatever.
Written approval.
And Brian Reed is now the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners and not Roger Christian. They made that change recently.
Are you, Lance, comfortable moving the amount? Originally, it was 5,000. You get very few things for 5,000. Is the commissioners are comfortable with increasing that? I put 25, and then based on our conversation a few weeks ago, I moved it to 15. Do you want to move that to 10? I mean, 5's a little, with the way things cost nowadays, 5 is a little, you know. I mean, we don't want to hold up something for 5,000. I mean, obviously 10 to 15,000 seems to be more of a reasonable prior approval.
Put that on the shelf. for
Okay,
future
we can do that. We can do that.
Couple of things, I mean, we've dealt with the billing issue, but on your fuel facility cost breakdown,
Yes.
that you calculate the 8 cents on. I see 3 items in there that are one-time purchases that end up going into an ongoing split. The fuel software, the new dispensers, the future upgrade. We'll talk about the $14,000 in a minute. And utilities, I mean, what are you what do you use Rocky Mountain Power for?
It's not, it's city utilities.
There's some of the bills on your explanation, the breakdown of Rocky Mountain Power.
My understanding was that was the utilities that need to run, to run the actual box that was,
Power.
yeah. So I'm not sure why that would be.
Okay, that's just a minor question.
Okay, that's a good question though.
Utilities.
Looks like there is one on four.
Because those are justification for a 2 cent increase.
Oh, sure.
The bigger amounts that I'm concerned about is the one time is the new dispensers. Because you end up paying that on a 2 cent perpetually.
Mhm.
Well, what happens when that's paid off to the extra penny or whatever that relates to? So that's a question.
It's not under operating.
Yeah, so some of that is, some of it is one-time cost, some of it's on-time cost, and we can break that into fixed costs, because we still have to pay maintenance fee.
Okay, but the 83,000 is a one time.
The upgrade.
Yep, so talking about the fuel focus software, some of it's one-time, some of it's ongoing.
Okay, fuel focus software. Got a kind of a big concern, especially if we were to try to assume the maintenance of that. Because that was purchased, I understand, from the invoice in 2020. And we weren't even aware of it until we started looking in.
You should have been.
We should-
Aware,
Well, we
yeah.
weren't, okay.
Yeah.
The problem it causes is our inventory management. You guys, when you said last time, you use that to download and keep track of all your inventory management. We have a software program that we don't even know, that's been paid for and developed over the years will interface with that. And so it's of very little use to us. No consultation, it was just a decision that was made. It was over the amount, of the 5,000, over the 15, over the 25. For a purchase, but we weren't approached on, which we probably would have had some input from our software on whether it would work or not. So it's put in there as kind of a one-time ongoing slash that has, the only thing we use is your spreadsheets. And I don't know how much of that develops for that. Because, that's a concern to us on this list.
And to clarify, the staff, not Stan, the staff that was there previously was asked to provide writing to the commissioners, notifying them of the city's interest to do that software upgrade. Apparently that was not.
Yeah, and you indicated that you weren't even aware of this agreement.
Yeah.
Until we started this discussion. Which, like $14,000 one. I looked through the notifications, all the notifications were just about scheduling. Between these two, nothing about the payment. I think you were taking it to city council and got it approved, before you even notified us. And then asked us to, kind of waive that basically requirement of the written notification. On the 14,000.
Yeah. We actually took the 14,000 to council March 7th of 2024. Well, actually it was March following week, so March 4th.
But the only notifications staff got, not even us, was on the schedule of when it would be repaired. In the past, the 6 cents included repairs. So, that, just put that in the category.
Oh,
of
absolutely.
concern
Yeah,
As I
Sure.
get down the list.
sure.
Let's see. Okay, in visiting after we visited last time and saw the numbers, which really helped, it gave us the understanding, originally that half full, be empty and keep the half full in reserve. I'm not sure if you guys were aware of that. You know, it sounds like you're doing a good job of keeping it ordered.
We fill it every week. Yes,
And
but-
keeping it full. The questions come, and this goes back to the original agreement. Because the idea was that we had enough to operate for a period of time. Some of you don't remember the fuel lines of Jimmy Carter days. You know, and I mean, I get concerned looking at the political environment right now with, tapping down the strategic reserves if there's ever a need for it. You could end up in that kind of situation. The idea with that is then you can keep operating essential services with that. The concern is we don't outline, how that's gonna be distributed. Generally, it's understood at the time, can't remember, I think it was Mike Taysom, you know, the emergency manager, because all situations like that are countywide. And there would be a priority system, because you wouldn't want any non-essential. And even if you get to the point where you have to start metering out essential services, you want to have kind of and even though he's a county employee, he's independent, his authorities are statutory in that case of declaring an emergency. And that's the way we understood it. And I don't know if that'd be a pinch point in a new agreement, you know, to have that understood. But the concern right now is with the usage gone up as much as it has. Now we have, what, 40,000 gallons over there?
So our current capacity is 40,000 gallons of diesel fuel, 15,000 gallons of gasoline, and then we have 6,000 gallon tank that we keep number one diesel in.
Okay.
For winter blending.
Yeah.
So 61.
The concern is how much would that last under the current? You know, so we were interested, I think it was Commissioner Reed that brought it up in, you know, the possibility of adding a tank out there and the cost for that. You know, the estimates of adding additional costs to their tank, because that satisfies some of our concern for future needs.
Would you want gas or diesel?
Probably diesel. You know, but you know, there could be an adjustment, because diesel is what your streets are gonna run on, your gas is your police. They're a minor user. Well, the sheriff's a lot more minor user, you know, for us.
But in an emergency setting, all of the road and bridge construction stuff that would need to be activated is all diesel, and fire and ambulance are all diesel as well. So that's important, and I can speak to the time that this was done. I was involved, I was the division chief of the fire department, and I was over our state resources and with then the Bureau of Homeland Security and setting up our stand-up readiness and making sure that we as a regional response team, which is part of what that field would have to supply, would be our portion of the stand-up readiness of the state of Idaho as a regional response team from the Idaho Falls Fire Department to operate that equipment. And under federal mandate, that comes under the Bureau of Homeland Security, which is now Department of Emergency Management in the state of Idaho. And that's the line of authority that goes to Brad Clements as the county emergency manager, and the city had total buy-in in that process. If there's an emergency, that's how it operates, and that's how we collectively operate.
And if I may, oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask Dan a real quick question. So with our software that we have right now with the bots, we have the ability though, if we were in an emergency situation, that we could literally turn
Yes,
off
we can
non-essential.
Certain.
Right,
Yeah.
but,
Absolutely.
That's good news.
you know, so, but Brad would need that authorization from the city, you know, probably need to be written in agreement that he had that, to instruct. Because, you know, management may not be, you know, just, you know, I mean, you've got your obvious, make sure the roads are open, make sure essential functions are provided, which would be probably landfill. It might be a tier 2, you know, if you had to start trimming back on that, garbage collection, because those are life safety issues, if they're let go long enough. But you gotta make sure your ambulances are running, your fires running, your police, your sheriff, roads, streets,
Electric utilities.
yeah.
Idaho Falls Power, Water Department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would have to
Sewer
be
infrastructure.
dictated by the type of emergency. Almost all emergencies of this nature affecting fuel would be covered under what John's talking about. The city does have the option to declare their own state of emergency, if it only affects the city. When we had that with the power outage on the snowstorm, we had to kind of have an understanding that, the city wanted to declare an emergency. They wanted to hold off for 3 or 4 hours. I think it was Jackie Flowers who was here at the time. And, we talked to our emergency manager and they had talked to Rocky Mountain Power because it was a Rocky Mountain Power issue too. And decided that let's hold off for 3 or 4 hours. Had a little difference of opinion because the city wanted to do it right now, which we thought, at least get an idea before the nighttime came. Temperatures anyway. So, there could be those rubs, but they're very not likely. So that's a concern. Not to try to solve it right now, just outlining some of the things we're looking at.
And if I may too, and I can also check with Chief Nelson or Fire Chief Nelson. I know that prior to Chief Hanneman retiring, he went through a whole project, and I believe he worked side by side with Mr.
Dwayne
Clemens.
was my hazmat team leader.
Yeah. Yeah, so I know there was a document prepared. I know they identified certain individuals, but I
I
can.
just want to make sure that document
Yes.
is up to date. It's not
Exactly.
10 years behind.
Sure,
10 years
we can
out of
check.
date.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but that's kind of a secondary issue just on our list. Get down to some of what we think our options are. So, there would need to be, to satisfy our needs for the extra storage, all the other things, adding gift in here. That's another demand on the fuel, that is not even calculated into some of these needs on the reserve, which, I understand, I think you called it a subunit of government. Would have to be an MOU between, that's fine, that's up to the city. But it does affect the the storage, the emergency storage issue. Getting a guesstimate on a tank, Lance tells me a tank could be about $100,000. And then the excavation and, putting the concrete on could be about another 150. Whether there'd be a willingness of the city to do that, split the costs on that according to the old agreement.
Well, and I'd like to interject there to your question. I think we're short on gas too.
I agree.
Right.
I mean,
would
with
like
only
to see-
15,000,
you could
I
adjust
think
that.
percentage wise, we're shorter on gas than we are diesel, so
But isn't that
we really need both.
one of the tanks are partitioned?
So we have two 20,000 gallon manifolded diesel tanks. A single 15,000 gasoline tank. So I would say if we're talking of increasing capacity, both fuels would be.
Yeah.
I dig a hole once and put 2 in, so.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, because in my mind, I already had
Now,
accounted.
what is
Yeah.
over to the regular
Yeah, I think it's got to be both.
tank and put in a new tank for regular.
Say again.
Move the number 1 diesel from the partition tank, open that up to regular diesel, move the number 1 to the regular
So
gasoline tank and put in a new tank for regular. Lots of options. Dig
Yes.
a hole once, you're right. Dig a
So
hole once.
if we wanted to discuss, that avenue, diesel number 1 and diesel number 2 are very similar.
Yeah.
They meter the same, they use the same dispensers. It would be a matter of us running the number 1 out and refilling it with number
Okay.
2. That's,
Those are, just to see on a broader scope, if the city would be interested in that. The software is still an issue. I don't know how we resolve that, because it's difficult for us to want to pay for a system that we can't use. you know, unless we can find out it's compatible, we haven't been able to get an answer to see if that can be used there.
What's sorry, the other, what's your annual maintenance agreement on your software?
I'll look that one up.
Yeah,
I don't know. off the top of my head.
I wanna say it's between eight and
Kinda
ten
tells us.
thousand, $8,000 to $10,000.
License, annual
Yeah.
license.
And there's like seat licenses and that type of thing, but it's usually, we budget anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 a year just for the maintenance. And that way, if we
That's
run into
really what needs
problems.
to be in the 8%. Because that's not.
So it's 50,000 is kind of a retroactive because you have to go out just to seek approval.
Right.
Okay,
Mhm.
the other thing, you know, we feel pretty strongly about is a canopy. Because that's causing problems with the bobs icing up. That's part of the issue you've had over there, I understand.
yes, Leonard Petroleum is working on it, getting us a quote for a canopy.
Yeah, a quote for a canopy is in the 100 to 125, plus you have to have, you know, the foundations. and the
Yep, concrete
put
work,
it down, so,
lighting,
yeah, you would probably.
Yeah.
This is my farmer estimate, 150.
Yeah.
So,
so it'll need to be,
so those are things to see if the city.
Oh, yeah,
would be
absolutely.
To agree. You see the upgrades, is that the total cost of all of the upgrades? 'Cause I understand this equipment when it was bought wasn't spec'd, to where we could get a local supplier and they've gone out of business, and that's why we're having the issues. Chad getting parts, is that correct?
yes, so I believe it was Gale's Service out of Boise that originally installed this. And the equipment that they used was originally Bennett dispensers and a pneumacator tank monitoring system. And those are very much an oddity in this part of the country. So the dispensers, the repairs, the parts, they got to where they were weeks lead time to get replacement components and very expensive, which led to, you know, after 13 years, lots of breakdowns, lots of repairs needed, long wait times. And yes, local petroleum companies just not being familiar with the system.
So the 86,000 to upgrade everything to the, Wayne.
Yeah, so yes, this approximately $84,000 replaced all 5 of the above ground dispensers, nozzles, hoses, integrated it with the fleet software. It's a Wayne dispenser. Leonard Petroleum is factory authorized, certified to repair those. They stock many of the components needed to keep those running at their location here in town.
Is that the same system they have at the airport?
Say again,
Is that the same food system they have at the airport?
I'm not familiar with what the airport has. Are you,
That is a city.
are you speaking about the
Convo?
the convo?
That's the vault.
It's the same system for monitoring pumps. And we'll see,
The
it's a city
Convault.
asset, it would make sense to have them all
Yeah,
the same.
the Convault it's a very analog system,
Old fashioned.
old fashioned, yeah.
But there are plans to electrify that. What we wanted to do is see how this system, make sure everything is, all the little bugs are worked out if we have any, which we're not anticipating having any. And then the next phase would be for us to electrify, if you will, the convolts that we have, particularly at the airport, so we can get away from that old gas pumping
Well, so
system.
the Convault's an above ground tank.
No, I'm talking about the underground tank.
Oh,
It's off
up
the
the
north
fire
end of the
station.
Airport, no,
No?
No, that's not our
There's a-
responsibility.
Oh,
big one just south of the parking lot from the airport. There's a big gravel patch with manholes that go down and walk around the tank space and.
Yeah, that's not our
It's where they fill
responsibility.
the airport, that comes out of.
Oh,
Okay, just,
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I just,
Learn something new.
if that's an airport, you know, if that's a city.
That's not a,
Did inspections on it, and there's.
Oh.
So, So that upgrade would be everything, but it would also include upgrading the integration for the system.
So this 84,000 upgrade is the one that took place in January of this year.
It already took place.
Already took place.
84,000.
Yes.
The council memo, it originally was quoted as a 69,000. And the council memo was originally quoted at 69,000, but, correct me if I'm wrong, once they got out there, they started removing, talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so it was originally anticipated that these new dispensers would be compatible with the existing wiring. And as they removed the old dispensers, got to installing the new ones, turns out it wasn't. And there are only certain electricians that are certified to wire up a fuel station. So it pushed the project over budget for them to come in, rewire the system to be compatible with our new Wayne dispensers. And that's the additional roughly $14,000.
The addition, because, okay, but that was also never brought to the county for approval, correct?
No, what we had talked about needing to upgrade our fuel facility when it came out, I believe it was in November. And we were still in the process of getting quotes and getting all that
But
finalized.
apparently it's already happened.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, because we were having issues with, what was that, the fast hose, or what was it by the?
Yes, so there are high-speed diesel dispensers.
Right.
For use for filling trucks and heavy equipment. And then there are two of them that are your conventional, similar to what you use at a gas station.
And that's where I was confused and, the other concern is, an analysis like this taking 6 months. Because a lot of things change, a lot of things happen. Apparently have already happened that we weren't aware of. So, we're not ready, because it's not on as an action item today to discuss and approve or, figure out what we're going to do on that. That helps clarify because we have different recollections. The 83,000, 86,000, 14,000, trying to figure out which is which. And that's where the communication and it was put in the contract to make sure we understood that, signed off on it. So, that we knew what we were billing for anyway.
Right, and we haven't billed a county or anything like that.
No,
We,
I know.
that's been,
But you made a request and
yeah, we
we'll
did a request.
consider that. So, and then, in the, looking back at the old agreement, the city retains the right under 8.2 to remove all that at their own sole discretion. Yes, everything and do the environmental remediation if you decide you don't want tanks under there for whatever reason. Just to point it out, that concern, looking back on it. Let's see, what we ask, on some of these, what happens to 2 cents after? Because the 83,000 is a request for us to pay it and a request to put it in the 2 cents for reimbursement.
I think the intent was that the 2 cents would be used to pay that off, and then every year we would reassess what that fee should be.
So those two requests are kind of conflicting to see if we'll pay for it now and then the two.
I can see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, double billing. Double dipping, whatever.
I mean, there's 2 ways you can do this. I mean, we can either, every time we want to do a project, we come and say split 50-50, or we can just have the cent be the way that we just pay that, the city pays for it up front, and the cents is how you pay that back. I mean, either way. Otherwise, you can separate and say we have 2 agreements. This is for the things we split, these are the things that we, in a sense, cover. We're fine either way, whichever way you feel most comfortable, you want to handle that.
And to clarify, the reason that we've mapped all this out is not that, this is like, we're expecting the county to go back and pay for things that apparently we're not city did not give them written notice,
I
written approval of.
understand that.
But just more of a, just this is what we have put in, this is what it's cost as far as running it so far. For this period of time between 2010 and 2013, 2014-ish. So that's really the purpose of the exercise.
Like,
20.
I can't go back that far.
Did I say 2010? 2010 to 2020, what did I say?
You're not old enough. I'm only allowed to make close to that.
1910.
Yeah.
Ask him about 1910.
Yeah, yeah, because, you know, in all fairness, I think we're gonna be looking at in the next 5 years, some other types of things that are probably gonna need to be, that are gonna be more than $5,000 that we need to have a discussion on.
Yeah,
prior
there
to.
may be some concrete work that might need to be redone.
Okay.
Well, the next 5, things like
I
that.
kind of pull all this together because there's a lot of information to consider. I think we've outlined.
Yeah.
Our desires for you to go back and study and see if you will participate.
Sure.
So we pretty much have 3 options. One is to assume the management of it. That comes with some difficulties now, especially because of the software and, you know, the changeover, you know, and the length of time for the management. You know, the other option is to address our concerns about the extra storage, is to add a canopy and the fuel storage. We figured the cost of that's about 400,000 estimated, to see if the city would be willing to do that. And the third option, you know, kind of want to let you know, because I've done a little research on some of this. That's where I'm getting some of these numbers from, on what it would cost us to do our own. And then according to, I think it's section 9, you know, just institute the buyout by the city based on an agreed to appraiser. And I plan on having that analysis to present to the commissioners in 3 weeks.
Okay.
Roughly. And so we'd appreciate it if you could get your analysis and, you know, ideas on if you felt like it was more worthwhile for us to expand on the cities, whether we want to do it, because that addresses a lot of our extra capacity needs. And, you know, then we'd have the up to date with a software that we could use. That's the considerations we're having.
No, that's fair.
So I just wanted to throw that out because I think under the agreement, you know, it stays in place with the current manager for the fiscal year following. And so if we were to go that route, we'd want to make sure and get the notice now and that it would continue. I mean, there's provisions, I think, in there for buyout of the remaining fuel, things like that. So.
Yeah.
All these are budgetary concerns.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, walking down the budget road and making the right plans, so.
And we'll look at the analysis, I guess, and break it up into pieces that will be easier to understand, a little more explanation, and we'll get to you shortly. It won't take 6 months to get it done.
In order to help them as far as if they look at extra capacity on both diesel and gasoline, how much are they willing to be to look at?
Well, I don't know how you project what Gift is gonna do in the next 2 years with their projected growth pattern.
We've heard estimates currently that they're about 2,000 gallons of gasoline a month
Now,
currently.
and they're talking about adding 8 more vehicles.
I have not, I don't know, do you know?
That's
No.
what I hear.
Yeah, so that,
Yeah,
I think they're,
Which, I mean, I'm all for big public transport systems and cities where they work.
yeah, I believe they're running
But
8 or 9 right now, so that would
double your
double
fleet.
it, yeah.
potentially.
But I, you know, I don't know how you, that's a.
Well, we can go back and we can say, here's how much gallons we've used over time, trend it out, so it's an upward trend, plus to add that, say, if we wanted to have this many months or this many weeks on fuel on hand, we can say this is what the value should be.
No, I think we're somewhere, we need another 20,000 diesel and 10,000 gas. I mean, that's kind of
That's now.
right now.
But not
5 years from now,
5 years from now.
what are we gonna actually need? Because we don't wanna dig it up 5 years from now.
Yeah.
And that's, you know,
We're gonna wanna put the tanks in first, and then it can't be second, that cannot be first, and then.
oh, yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also we would need to make sure that we can get the right product to the right dispenser,
Yeah.
right? There's plumbing and
Yeah.
wiring, there's, it's,
This
it's.
is all the planning thing. I appreciate the amount of work that the three of you put into this and what you, the basket of bags that you got handed and got to sort out, and I think you're doing a fine job of trying to come up with answers to questions that it shocks me, having been part of some of this, you know, more than a decade ago, but that's what we have. We have an identity traffic study that sat on the shelf for 20 years that nobody looked at. And now we're gonna do another one. And
Yeah.
so I know how that happens. And we have some councilmen that are very interested in not having things set on shelves anymore. That we look at them every year
Well,
and that's
you know,
good.
and I think this project is indicative of it. It was a very successful project because we weren't having any issues with it. It was kind of running itself, out
Yeah.
of sight, out
Yeah.
of mind, kind of like when you buy a new house and you move into the new house and things are going really great. And then, you know,
Tell them
7 to
on
10
sales
years,
winter.
Yeah.
the water heater
There
goes
was a problem
out.
in your sewer and
You know, and so,
Yep.
you know, obviously that was, you know, a testament to the leadership at the time that the facility was built, because it
You're
was
right.
built
So
very well.
we bow
And,
down to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And I have no pride of ownership
Yeah.
for creating them because things change.
Yeah.
And aside from those that are semi-predictable,
mhm.
you know, we've had disparate growth, we've had extreme growth the last little while.
And
so
so
trying to
economy
forecast-
worldwide.
Trying to forecast that ahead. This old facility doesn't meet that for both of us.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
why I think it's important we look at the three, and that doesn't mean come back here with a proposal agreement, just a simple answer. I mean, is the city willing to take a look at doing some of that stuff immediately? You know, the expansion, some of these other costs, so we could upgrade that. And does it meet our goals for storage? Reserves, we don't call it storage, but it's basically reserves. You know, and our targets may be different.
Would it be possible to get a name to these numbers, at least for the county use? I mean, I don't expect them for all of the city functions, but
You know what who the numbers are assigned to?
Oh.
On the fuel?
is that in our information somewhere and I missed it?
No, you can put names on there.
Yeah, these are county departments here.
Could you? That would really help me in understanding what the county,
think-
what I believe the county
I
needs.
think what Pam provided us for the last year anyway, it has that, doesn't it? That full spreadsheet
Mhm.
that Ron.
The electronic ones.
sort for us.
Electronic ones, yeah.
You know,
I haven't.
I'll have to look at this, but if it's not too much trouble, if you could give me a column that
No
has.
trouble.
This
what
this
those
is
are.
just mainly like.
What's your phone
summary.
number?
208-589-4368.
I will give you a call set later today with these
All right, thank you. Is
departments, yeah.
there anything else?
Email to it.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. You can just send an email.
All right, and what's your email address?
It's breed@bonnevillecountyIdaho.gov.
Okay. Yours, sir, got that memo?
Put it in enough times, change it. Stuff.
Is there anything else you guys have?
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
No, we appreciate your help through this. I think it's important for the future of both of us, you know, to make sure this is right.
They're launching in 2020s.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
In the.
I've been upstairs. Is your office upstairs?
I'm downstairs.
There was nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
This says October 2020, but there's not from October through this January
Okay. Already.
in that budget.
That'll probably be. County, but we'll have to work on that.
That, now it's 99,000 rows of data, but
Yeah,
just missing 4 months. So,
yeah, I'll get. Yeah, no problem.
okay, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Enlightening.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot to digest.
Yeah.
You wanna, did you want to talk about?
Yeah. The Hammond Lincoln. So the Hammond Lincoln development, they were the ones that come in late last week and tried to get a bond or whatever to get a permit to cut into Hammond Road. They were able to provide a cash bond in order to do that, but they haven't worked out the development bond according to the development agreement. So they have provided a standby letter of credit, which is different than our standard development agreement outlines. And I wanted to make sure that commissioners are okay with a standby letter of credit from Morgan Stanley Private Bank, guaranteeing certain funds, and the funds are more than what I had communicated with them needed to be there. But it, again, because it's a different than what the development agreement specifically calls for, it calls for a cash deposit, certified check, negotiable bond, or irrevocable bank letter of credit.
And why are they not able to do that?
It's terminology, because what this, and as I talked to Devin about it, the terminology, they have it, it's a 1 year instead of longer, but it's a 5-year agreement renewed automatically annually with an evergreen, they call it.
An evergreen. So the standby expires at this office on 1 year from issuance. Such expiration date will be automatically extended without amendment for a period of 1 year from the expiration date or any future expiration date, unless at least 60 days prior to then the current expiration date, we send notice to the beneficiary. That beneficiaries address. So it's essentially, it's going to continue for 1 year and then be gone further than that, at least 1 year from issuance.
For the warranty. Devin's concern, this is far in excess of what he would require to get it done, to get going. They did the cash, so they cut into Hammond Road. And I wasn't aware, that all the interior roads are private. They just have to be accepted by the county, with the warranty. So his concern is, of course, they're stuck with that because the cost of the bond at the higher level without being able to adjust it down to what Lance felt like was necessary. And the only thing that they're really warranting, other than their own roads to be accepted.
Their own roads, water, sewer, the other types of utilities inside these private roads. Most of the public roads are on Ammon itself and Lincoln itself. And so that's, again, it's inside the subdivision, it's private roads. But we still want to make sure that they're gonna finish those private roads before inside the subdivision, they get certificates of occupancy for whoever too.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, because it's just the wording, what, and we may want to look at modifying, because we've modified that a couple of times on what's acceptable.
Yeah,
Because this is kind of a new animal. They've been going back and forth to satisfy Scott. His was on the jurisdiction, which took them quite some time to get, because it was always Delaware or some other area. And Scott said, no, we can't do that. So they finally got the bank to approve this with the jurisdiction here.
Okay.
But Lance has to make sure that we're covered on the development agreement. It's like I told Dustin, I said, if something happens that you don't get it done, and they cancel this, you're basically red tag.
Yeah.
And I'll get back with them then and say that I'll make sure we have everything filled in on it, but it'll just follow through.
What else have we got?
I think that's all we had for discussions. Next week's gonna be a little bit longer discussion on some certain things, but
Give us a heads up.
well, I've got a change order on 45th East to go through with you, and it's gonna take a little bit longer. So
Significant.
it's $47,000. But it's a result of 9 different work change directives that have happened over the past almost 9 months. And so I've been known that it's been coming, it's just finally got to the point where we're issuing a change order for it, so.
What are they doing out there right now?
They are excavating on the west side of 45th East they're heading north from Iona to 49th North, they're almost 41st North. Right there by Alvin Hatches.
So they're gonna pave the one side and.
No, well, they're just excavating and bringing in the material for the base on one, and then they'll go across the other side and start excavating that out and bringing that in. So they'll have to get all of it basically to pit run and then put the 3/4 on top before they pave, and they'll probably try to pave pretty much at the same time.
It's a schedule.
Schedule right now, it's kind of got a 2-week rolling stuff, but they have on their change orders and everything else be done by August 1st, I think.
Painting and everything.
Yeah,
That'll be the time for snow, which is good.
Yes.
that's the schedule, so, and we'll be pressing them to
And we
finish
need
by
the
August.
sign at Austin's exit.
Sure.
Just,
We can put detour signs up, you
And
bet.
down his street.
yeah,
Yeah, and around, the whole way around, you
so
bet.
he's not here to defend himself. Outstanding.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
They're making good progress. So,
Good.